I'm Debbie Abrahams and I'm a hand knit designer. I use a lot of beads in my work and I use the slip stitch method to knit in the beads, so this is what I'm going to show you now. You can knit in beads on both wrong side and right side rows. I'm going to show you next how to knit in beads on a right side row of stocking stitch, which is knit on right sides, purl on wrong side. So you work to where you want to place the first bead. Then you slide a bead up the yarn so it's sitting close to the right hand needle. You then bring the yarn between the needles to the front of the work with the bead. Slip the next stitch purlwise, then take the yarn back between the needles, leaving the bead in front of the slipped stitch. The next stitch after the bead will just need to be knitted quite tightly, giving it a little tug to make sure that the bead in front of the previous stitch sits snugly against the knitting. So we repeat that process for the next bead, which is to bring the yarn forward between the needles to the front, slip the next stitch purlwise, take the yarn back between the needles, leaving the bead in front of the slip stitch. So the beads that I've knitted in here have one stitch between them. I'm going to continue just to knit to the end of this row, and then I'm going to show you how to knit in beads when you're on a wrong side row, which on stocking stitch will be a purl row. Okay. So I'm going to work to the position of the first bead. Then I slide one bead up the yarn, take the yarn back between the needles with the bead, slip the next stitch as if to purl, and bring the yarn between the needles towards me again, leaving the bead on the right side of the work in front of the slip stitch. Purl the next stitch and just give it a little tug just to make sure that the bead is sitting neatly on the front side of the work. And then I'm placing another bead, taking the yarn back between the needles with the bead, slipping the next stitch purlwise, and then bringing the yarn towards me again, leaving the bead in front of the slip stitch. You can find a large selection of beads available on my website in lots of different colours. The website address is www.debbieabrahamsbeads.co.uk. You will also be able to find many patterns that use beads. In my latest book, Kaleidoscope, which I've co-written with knit and crochet designer Jane Crowfoot, there are 24 knit and crochet projects for the home, and several of these patterns use Debbie Abrahams beads.